This is CBN Newswatch.
And thank you so much for joining us. It is Thursday, January 16th. I'm Efrem Graham. Ahead today, the Senate prepares to take up impeachment after the House sends over its articles impeaching President Donald Trump, passed by Democrats without any Republican support. Now the trial will begin next week. The president set to unveil new guidelines today on prayer in school, following up on a promise he made earlier this month. The persecution of Christians is getting worse around the world. We're going to explain why China has been one of the worst offenders. And we're going to introduce you to some college students who recently took a unique trip to Israel. We've got all those stories and more ahead in this edition of CBN Newswatch. We begin this half hour in Washington, where the Senate prepares to begin the third impeachment trial in American history after a House vote to officially send the two to the upper chamber. As Abigail Robertson now reports, the Senate trial can now begin nearly a month after the House first passed the impeachment articles along partisan lines.
The stage is set for the third impeachment trial of an American president charged with abuse of power and obstruction of Congress.
They have a hoax going on over there. Let's take care of it.
Allowing House Republicans to go vote no on sending articles to the Senate.
Kevin McCarthy, as you know, left for the hoax.
The president dismissed impeachment at an event at the White House. The House-passed resolution will take the case to the Senate.
It's always about marking history using time.
Flanked by her 7 impeachment managers, Speaker Nancy Pelosi said time is on her side.
Time has been our friend in all of this because it has yielded incriminating evidence, more truth into the public domain.
For his part, the president wasted no time, taking to Twitter during the Speaker's announcement to call the trial another con job, adding that all of this work was supposed to be done by the House, not the Senate.
Time has given us the ability to show the American people the necessity of a fair trial.
Newly appointed impeachment manager Adam Schiff said a fair trial demands the consideration of more evidence, specifically newly released documents from an associate of Rudy Giuliani, the president's personal attorney.
If we feel that we do not have enough information, I'm fine with it.
Indiana Republican Senator Mike Braun told CBN News that calling witnesses goes both ways, citing Joe Biden as a potential witness due to his son Hunter's role with Ukrainian gas company Burisma.
How that can't be relevant to the discussion when there was corruption in Ukraine, and are you immune from any kind of a scrutiny because you're a potential political rival?
After months of closed-door meetings and public hearings, Republican senators see the trial on their side of the Hill as an opportunity to hear the rest of the story.
There is a significant desire on our side for the president to be heard.
During the mandatory trial, strict rules are in place on the Senate floor, including no cell phones or electronics or senators talking amongst themselves. Plus, they're being told to prepare for 6-hour sessions. Reporting from Capitol Hill, Abigail Robertson, CBN News.
More evidence of a growing division among Democrats. Elizabeth Warren accused Bernie Sanders of calling her a liar after the Democratic presidential debate Tuesday night during a tense exchange where she refused to shake his outstretched hand. CNN, which co-hosted the debate, released the audio Wednesday.
I think you called me a liar on national TV.
What?
I think you called me a liar on national TV.
Let's not do it right now. You want to have that discussion, we'll have that discussion. You called me, you told me. All right, let's not do it now.
During the debate, Sanders denied Warren's claim he told her a woman couldn't win the White House in a one-on-one meeting in 2018. Their dispute at the debate was the latest development in the accelerating rift between the two top progressive candidates, and it has many activists on the left worried that it could split their votes and drive many of them toward former Vice President Joe Biden. The Senate is set to give President Donald Trump back-to-back victories on trade. It's expected to approve the new United States-Mexico-Canada agreement today and send it to the president for his signature. That will come just a day after the president signed a new trade agreement with China.
Together we are righting the wrongs of the past and delivering a future of economic justice and security for American workers, farmers, and families.
China is promising to buy more American products and include measures to protect American products from being counterfeited by Chinese companies. The president is also planning to unveil new federal guidelines today on constitutional prayer in public schools. The specifics were not clear ahead of the announcement, but the president did promise earlier this month at the Evangelicals for Trump rally in Florida that he would take action to safeguard students and teachers' First Amendment rights to pray in our schools, saying, quote, "We will not allow faithful Americans to be bullied by the hard left." The announcement comes as the president has declared today Religious Freedom Day, marking America's long history of protecting religious liberty. Coming up, the persecution of Christians is growing around the world, with slightly more than 250 million now experiencing it. And one country where it's getting worse is China. We're going to bring you that story when we come back.
I am Region's first ROTC graduate student.
Meet the pastors who are preaching the gospel in a fresh, fearless way. I'm Roberto Torres Cedillo. Join me each week for Next Gen Voices. And watch God transform a generation.
How'd you like to get a redo on your health, on your body, on your arteries, so you could have the energy you had 20 years ago? The great news is you can. I'm Dr. Mike Roizen, chair of the Wellness Institute at the Cleveland Clinic. I've written 4 New York Times bestsellers. But even better than having to read all that, you can listen to this DVD and watch it. Protect your heart? Yes, you can. Here's how.
Go to CBN.com or call 1-800-700-7000 for your free copy of Protect Your Heart. Let the medical experts show you their new discoveries on how to avoid heart disease and even reverse it. Easy steps to uncover the hidden dangers in your medicine cabinet, reduce stress, and get a complete do-over for your health. Call 1-800-700-7000. That's 1-800-700-7000. Or go to CBN.com to claim your free copy of Protect Your Heart.
Get the top political news and analysis from Washington on Faith Nation, tonight at 6 Eastern, only on the CBN News Channel.
1 in 8 Christians around the world experience persecution. That's about 260 million people, and that persecution is growing. In its 2020 World Watch List report, Open Doors says persecution increased 6% last year, and nearly 3,000 Christians were killed for their faith in 2019. On this week's episode of The Global Lane, Open Doors USA, President David Curry explains why China had the biggest jump up the list.
What's so scary about the persecution of Christians in China is that China is building what I think is a blueprint, a roadmap of persecution for other regimes around the world. And they're doing it with surveillance, with a social score that measures Christian behavior, attending church, taking your kids to Sunday school, as a negative thing. And they're taking that social score and melding it with surveillance, not just on the street to protect the citizens, but an invasive surveillance inside the churches. And they're shutting down house churches that won't comply, and others as well, arresting pastors that won't play along with their surveillance system. I think this could be the roadmap for persecution for other regimes, because Iran and others want to buy this technology, and China seems willing to sell it.
Now, President Trump just signed the Phase 1 trade deal with China. He says he hopes to visit there soon. What should President Trump say to President Xi about the way that China treats Christians and other faith groups, and should there be linkage in trade talks?
Well, I certainly believe this needs to be a point of discussion. Progress on the economic front, these kinds of trade deals can be a very positive thing, obviously. But Phase 2 and other phases of any trade deal need to understand that you cannot deal with a country like China unless you have some assurance that human rights and the rule of law are significant to them in the same way that they're significant to us. Doing business with people, doing business with partner or friend countries, we can't allow them to violate human rights, this first right of freedom of conscience, to decide for yourself what you believe and to practice your faith in your own way.
Tell us more then, David, about the 2020 watch list. Which countries are you most concerned about?
Well, obviously, North Korea is a country of great concern. Number one for 18 years in a row, total control of the government. We need to have some more transparency from them in these nuclear talks about how their human rights system tends to, is going to improve. Some maybe availability of the Red Cross and others in the State Department to visit the labor camps. There are 60,000 Christians in labor camps for owning a Bible, and many of them die there. We need to get some insight on that before we, move on to other discussions. That's a point of interest. Iran, of course, everybody's thinking about it. There's a story of Christians in Iran. It's number 9 on this year's World Watch List. So many Christians, a strong house church movement, but they're under tremendous pressure. Iran and the regime there is trying to crush Christianity, and we need to let our voice be heard that we know our family members there, brothers and sisters in Christ, are suffering, and we care, and we're praying for them.
And at number 2 and 3 and 4, Afghanistan, Somalia, Libya, all Muslim countries where it is life-threatening, like North Korea, to be a Christian. Tell us about those countries.
Well, you can't look at the World Watch List without understanding the trend of Islamic extremism. You have failed states, essentially Somalia and Libya, where these tribal factions and extremist groups are able to do what they want to do. If you're in Somalia and you're, suspected of being a Christian, let alone actually being a Christian, you will be executed in short order. You're not given a trial, nothing like that. So these are very dangerous places. And we need to understand and try to address with other Muslim groups how we're going to deal with this spread of Islamic extremism. It's not slowing down. It's a major driver of persecution of Christians. And until that's addressed from the moderate Muslim community and others in free governments, it's going to continue to build.
Nigeria, Pakistan. Those are also Muslim countries. Yeah. Tell us about that.
Absolutely. Well, Nigeria is one to watch because it mimics ISIS in many ways. You have Boko Haram, which is a partner with Al-Qaeda and ISIS, and they don't recognize borders. They want to set up a caliphate in Cameroon, Chad, Niger, and now in Burkina Faso. So they're looking to spread out from northern Nigeria. I think this is going to be one of those areas that could very easily tip into chaos because you have weak governments that are not protecting these soft targets of churches. So many people killed in Burkina Faso, Nigeria, these other areas by these extremist groups. We got to pay attention to it.
And how about Pakistan? We didn't see any churches actually bombed, I guess, in 2019, but still persecution's an issue there, is it not?
Oh, it really is. They let Asia Bibi go this year. That gives me some glimmer of hope that some people there in the country understand the very negative force of blasphemy laws, which is a vigilante justice. Anybody can accuse a Christian of blasphemy and they could get the death sentence. So those things are going to have to be addressed within Pakistan. But there is a long-standing church that loves Jesus and their dear people, and I pray for their safety regularly.
You can hear about the persecution of Christians internationally from David Curry tonight on the Global Lane. That show begins at 9:30 Eastern, only on the CBN News Channel. Still ahead, here at home, a school shooter can inflict devastation in just a few seconds. So what can schools do to protect themselves? We're going to show you one state solution, letting teachers carry guns themselves. We've got the story right after this.
Before you marry is a bad idea.
Don't tell me there's no such thing as gun violence.
That just depends on your definition of when life begins.
Watch Dan and Dale tackle trending topics that test your faith on the next Faith Wire, Monday night at 9:30. The Global Lane takes you around the world, providing facts over fiction.
What might rising trade and geopolitical tensions mean for you on the home front?
With over 45 years of experience, award-winning journalist Gary Lane brings you the truth from a global angle.
What about the issue of immigration?
World news analysis you won't see anywhere else.
And it's all right here on the Global Lane.
Watch The Global Lane, Thursday night at 9:30.
In 30 seconds or less, a school shooter can do devastating damage. So what can be done to stop the carnage? One state is now taking action, a bold action, allowing teachers to carry guns in the classroom. Caitlin Burke brings us the story.
Mass shootings have scarred communities within the Lone Star State, including Fort Worth, Sutherland Springs, El Paso, Santa Fe, Odessa. The impact is felt in how people practice their faith, run errands, and even protect their classrooms.
I hate having to talk about how we arrange our classrooms, so that we can barricade a door, as opposed to teaching teachers how to arrange their classrooms to create a great learning environment.
Of course, we have security cameras now throughout the building. We have monitors in several locations where a principal or somebody in authority can get to it and pull up cameras and figure out where people are at, where the shooter is at.
Precautions like these are now commonplace across the country, along with metal detectors, trauma kits, and lockdown drills. In Texas, a growing number of school districts are taking it one step further.
In front of Callisburg High School is a warning. The teachers here are armed and will use whatever force necessary to protect their students.
My primary concern is making sure everybody's safe and everybody gets to go home at the end of the day.
Just down the road, Era Independent School District is taking the same approach.
My goal is to try to control the factors that I can control, and then be prepared to deal with the things that we can't.
In June, Texas Governor Greg Abbott signed a law allowing school districts to arm teachers or school personnel as they see fit. But rural districts like Callisburg and Era began arming their teachers years ago.
We're a small country town in North Texas. We're not incorporated, so we don't have a local law enforcement that's unique to our community. Our county sheriff's department serves us greatly, but realistically, we're 15 to 20 minutes away, oftentimes, from response. And most of the statistics will say that school shootings are long over before that time. And so we really felt like we needed something to mitigate the damage in that interim time while we're waiting a response.
Because there is that possible 10, 15-minute delay, we thought the best avenue to protect our kids was to develop a local Guardian team.
The Guardian program is one of 2 training options given to Texas school districts that choose to arm staff. Under this program, schools establish the policies or rules, and it's designed to protect students while waiting for law enforcement to arrive.
They go through training every summer. They do both the shooting range for a full day, and then they spend a full day inside of a campus building going through various scenarios.
The other option, called the School Marshal Program, is overseen by the Texas Commission on Law Enforcement. It trains teachers to take out an active shooter as quickly as possible, much the same as an armed church member was recently able to take out an active shooter in 6 seconds at West Freeway Church of Christ outside of Fort Worth, Texas.
If the school marshal
or the armed person on campus doesn't actually end up stopping it themselves, they at least stop the progress, and it changes the dynamics of the whole situation.
Candidates must undergo 80 hours of training conducted by a law enforcement academy, which includes going through a computer-simulated course as well as a live drill.
Coming into it, they need to understand that there is a step here I may need to take that is scary and maybe something that I'm going to have to push through, a barrier I'm going to have to push through. And just like a police officer has to do that same thing. And we try to put them in training situations and scenarios that let them address that threshold.
Vickers stresses prevention, not armed teachers, is the solution for ending school shootings.
In a perfect world, we would stop it before it ever happens. I've seen those programs start as early as in elementary school, where they start trying to identify kids that are displaying those types of characteristics and tendencies, and by addressing them there, you can keep it from ever getting to that point. I think that's the ultimate answer, is addressing it before it gets started by helping these kids that end up being our shooters. But there's no way, I don't think you're ever going to completely, you can say, we're going to shut it down and you'll never have a shooter. So if you're going to have a shooter, then you need to have something to address it. That's where the school marshal program comes in.
Lockdown drills, security zones, and armed teachers. It's heartbreaking, but for now, it's reality. Caitlin Burke, CBN News, Dallas, Texas.
Coming up, hundreds of American Christian University students travel to Israel to learn, increase their faith, and experience the modern nation of Israel. We're going to bring you that story from Jerusalem when we come back.
On the home front.
Thanks for joining us for CBN's On the Home Front, where we highlight what the men and women of America's military do to defend our country. CBN honors the men and women in our military with an initiative called Helping the Home Front. It partners with churches across the country to meet the needs of their military families, from repairing homes to wiping out medical bills for wounded veterans.
On the home front, Tuesday morning at 10:30.
If you want to be an attorney with a passion for serving people and for excellence, Regent University needs to be high on your list.
Regent's award-winning law school doesn't just create lawyers. We create leaders, judges, prosecutors and defense lawyers, civil litigators, and leaders in government.
My focus has been trying to really make sure we have the future leaders we need for the bench and the bar and for society generally.
You'll learn from highly credentialed leaders who are current and former judges, distinguished scholars, and ACLJ counsel.
I'm so glad I chose Regent. The relationships here have been amazing. The faculty have been amazing. Not everybody's called to the same thing when they leave law school, but they're called by God who has a purpose for their lives, and He is going to use that education to make a difference in the world.
Regent will prepare you to be a purpose-driven, practice-ready lawyer. To start your rewarding law career, complete the online application, submit your transcripts, and take the law school admissions test by July. Apply today.
Check out the CBN News Daily Rundown podcast each weekday with me, Caitlin Burke. Click on the show tab at cbnnews.com where you can listen and subscribe.
Young people, millennials, are flocking to church.
It's not an exaggeration to say that we love to meet them and that we love to know their stories.
Hundreds of American Christian University students embarked on a recent journey to Israel for a unique learning experience. It's part of a program to increase their faith while also introducing them to a modern and vibrant Israel. CBN Middle East correspondent Julie Stahl brings us that story now from Jerusalem.
It's called Passages.
As a Christian, your why is rooted in your faith.
and your faith is rooted in Israel.
This big event in Jerusalem with Israeli musicians celebrated the 4th anniversary of this unique educational program for American Christian students.
In 2016, Passages was born to give you, the religious, political, social leaders of tomorrow, an opportunity to come to Israel, to ignite your faith, to connect with the values that the United States shares with Israel, and to strengthen your leadership journey.
Former Israeli Knesset member Michael Oren talked about their connection to the land.
Your faith gives you a part of this land, the land of Israel. It gives you a part of this sacred city.
After talking to students, current U.S. Ambassador to Israel David Friedman told CBN News the trip is invaluable at this time in history.
So to bring these kids here for 10 days and to show them, especially Jerusalem, but all the rest of the parts of the country, it's very, very powerful and very important.
Passages was started by Christian leader Robert Nicholson and Orthodox Jewish Israeli Rivka Kidron.
As I began to become more and more attached to Christianity, I began to see that many people my age and younger were actually going the opposite direction. And I knew that this encounter with the land of Israel could be a remedy for that.
I really believe we're at a unique moment in history where Christians and Jews can come together and really focus on our shared values, not what separates us, but what we have in common together.
Participants travel the land for 9 days, visiting historic biblical sites and seeing the modern state.
With Passages, they offer something unique by diving deep into the geopolitics of the land, trying to provide a diversity of narratives so that students come out of the trip realizing that the media isn't all that there is to the story.
CBN News spent a morning with students from the University of Alabama visiting Jerusalem's City of David.
As Christians, it's important for us to understand what's going on in the world, and so there is a lot of modern-day political conflict here, and so we're getting to hear lots of different perspectives on that and just become educated from a first-hand perspective.
Student leaders Carter Helm and Emily Bernard told us about the value of their visits.
My first tour of Israel had a great impact on my life. It changed the way I read the Bible. It changed my prayer life. It changed the way I think about culture and Judaism and the Hebraic roots of my faith. It had an everlasting impact, I would say.
By the end of this year, Passages will have brought 10,000 students to the Holy Land as part of this program leaders call a game changer in relations between faiths and nations. Julie Stahl, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Great program. Time now for your Thursday Thankful, and today I leave you with this prayer of gratitude. Father, I thank you for every promise you've made. I know your word is true in the face of any circumstance. With that prayer, I encourage you to make today a thankful Thursday and walk in an attitude of gratitude. I promise you, you will get where you're going a whole lot faster. Well, that will do it for this edition of CBN News Watch. Remember, you can find more of our news programs on the CBN News channel at any time. You can also find them online at cbnnews.com. We'd love to know what you think about the stories you've seen here today. Feel free to email us. That address is newswatch@cbn.com. And of course, you can always reach out and touch us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. So I hope you'll join us again right here next time. Make it a thankful Thursday. We'll see you right back here, same time tomorrow. Goodbye, everybody. God bless, and thanks for watching.